this is working. Yeah, it seems to be working. That's nice. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this live stream. In this live stream, I, Steven, just say Steven, that's fine, will do a migration of an Axon Framework 4 application to Axon Framework 5 milestone 1. That it's a milestone is rather important, right? Because that means it's not fully done yet. Sure, it is something you can play around with, you can test with, hence why I'm doing the migration as well, because I want to show this to all of you. But it's not ready yet. I do anticipate it will be ready somewhere this year. That is definitely the planning, so well, stay tuned. I'll also definitely do more of these sessions because I kind of like doing this. So yeah, look out for more schedules in the future. So, as I said, Steven, I am the Axon Framework lead developer at AxonIQ, and yeah, I've been working with Axon Framework for I don't know how long already, definitely the last 8 years or so. And yeah, this is the third major release I'm working on, and this time a bit more in charge, hence why I'm here. So let's do a little bit about the application that you're seeing here. So I have my own sample application that I use for scenarios like this, and it's called the game rental application. Now, game rental, maybe if you're in our area, if you've seen more Axonic samples, you might have heard of the bike rental. Yeah, this is very much a copy of that. I just moved it into the game area because I'm very much into video games. Well, you can see the stuff over there. I also have the old things. I also have the new things, but yeah, that's kind of my hobby. So yeah, this is a game rental application where you can, for a shop that needs to be able to register video games, needs to be able to rent them, and somebody needs to be able to return those. So it's a very small domain. There's not that much going on here. So yeah, not too special. Still, I can show all the important parts I want to show. For that, I am going to start with actually changing the version of this application because, well, we're doing a migration, right? So we're starting with the POM. It is I believe this is the latest version of Spring. We can stick to that one. We're on Java 21. Important to note, Framework 4, well, can be used with JDK 8 if you'd like, with Java 8. That's no longer the case. If you want to migrate to Framework 5, you definitely need to go to 21. And to be entirely frank with you, if the full release of Framework 5 takes until the next LTS of Java, we will move to the next LTS of Java. Because Java is doing these releases so quickly, I'd rather tag along with those. This also means you might expect more frequent major releases in the future. Ideally also making the migration easier. So I wouldn't fret too much about that. But yeah, JDK 21 is the baseline you would need to use if you're going to Framework 5. So also for the milestone. Here we have the version which we're going to change. So we are on 5.0.0, but milestone 1, so M1. In the meantime, while I'm in the POM, I am going to switch around a couple of things. Because as this is a milestone, not all the support is there yet, as you might expect. We're hard at work at making that. We definitely will have the majority of it back when the final release is there. But yeah, you know, we're not there yet. So for now, the console integration. So for those not aware, AxonIQ console integration. And I'm going to remove that dependency. Here we have the reactor extension from Framework. This is also still a Framework 4 extension. We're working on the Framework 5 extensions, so this is not there yet. So we're going to remove it. For ease of mind, I am not going to show the RSocket integration that this application has. So I'm just going to simplify it a little bit and remove that as well. We do keep Spring Webflux and Spring Web and Data JPA. We cannot use the starter yet because we have not built the Spring Boot integration. That is something that will come to milestone 2 of Framework 5. So differently put, we are working on that right now. What we first did in the previous milestone was redo our basic configuration in a way that you can go without annotations, you can choose to go with annotations again, and that it's more in a builder flow, that it feels a bit more reasonable. I wouldn't necessarily say it is simplified right away, because the Spring Boot configuration, well, that is the easiest that you could go. But for the users that we do have that don't use Spring, yeah, they had a very rough time with the old configuration. Hence why we simplified it. So I still think it is simplified. But we're going to add some dependencies. This is an event sourcing application, so I'm using the Axon event sourcing dependency. And it is seeing this one, but I can use the Axon.version here as the version. By using the event sourcing module, I automatically get the modeling module, which gives you all the entity modeling or the aggregate modeling, as it used to be called in Framework 4, and it gives you all the messaging support. In the past, we had a Axon configuration module that's entirely gone. That is not coming to return. Instead, we have added configuration components in each module, so that as a user you can pick and choose. You're no longer inclined, okay, I need to configure an application so I get everything, because that's what the Axon configuration module did. You can just, well, pick the one you want. So we use that dependency. I'm going to copy this for my ease of mind and reuse it for the Axon test dependency, which obviously remained. Starter and reactor test can remain. Another thing I can remove. The bill of materials, well, I'm not going to do milestone releases of the bill of materials. That's no use because there is literally just a single release right now. So no, we don't need that. And with that, we can rerun the Maven operation so that everything's loaded. In the meantime, if you are watching this, feel free to ask questions in the chat. I mean, that is what it's for. So just do so if you like. Huh? Nothing wrong with asking questions. I can answer whatever you want in the meantime. So, all right, that worked. That means we're gonna kill a couple of other things. And one of it is what we have here is a module Java information. So as you can see, this doesn't work. And I didn't want to test if it's going to work with this because it's not that point in time yet. So we can drop that. I'm going to the properties. All this is, as you can see, not used at the moment because this comes from Spring Boot. And well, we don't have the Axon Spring Boot starter dependency yet. That's coming in milestone 2, as I said. So we can comment this out. So that's gotten rid of. All right. Those are the basic things. So we can start compiling it by hitting Control F9 and just see what's going to break. And then we're going to fix what's going to break. So I can talk along. All right. The first part is the UI components, which is to be expected. As I said, we don't have the reactor extension yet. So there is no reactor command or query gateway for Framework 5. So I'm going to remove those. I'm going to replace these for just regular gateways. And I'm going to have IntelliJ help me out here, do the import statements for me, so that we see what's more going to break. Obvious one, this endpoint used monos. well, the regular command gateway doesn't use monos, so I need to replace that for a completable future, because that is what it uses. I can use that here and here for the return, for finding a game, for finding a catalog, and the subscription query still stays as it is. Now, the API changed a bit more when it comes to using the command gateway, and that is, if you're using this flow, you need to define two additional parameters. A thing called the processing context, and if you want to get the typing done automatically as well, also an expected type. Now, no processing context we should have, yeah, gotcha. So I'm using a no processing context just to have a simple implementation here. You might be wondering, why am I giving a, well, this is obviously a no-op, why am I giving a no-op processing context? Or what is this processing context to begin with? Now, this processing context was arguably the largest part we had to build for Framework 5, which is essentially the new unit of work. For those who are not aware, the unit of work since Framework 0.6, I think, is the component that manages the lifecycle of dispatch message and handling messages. So it has logic to maintain resources, logic to go into different phases. So you could see it a little bit like your transaction. It's not really your transaction, but it's your unit of work. One predicament we hit with the old unit of work was that it used thread locals and it wasn't fully async throughout. Both are an issue. Async because, well, we want to play along with virtual threads, for example. We want to do that stuff. That's also an issue with the thread local, as far as I'm aware. But the reason we started to think we need to get rid of the thread locals is for, well, full-fledged reactor support or reactive support. Because when you're using monos or fluxes, you can't really deal with thread locals very easily. So we decided Framework 5 will have no thread locals anymore, none. To still have the support that you might be dispatching a message from within an existing unit of work, because Framework did that under the hood, you now can provide the processing context. This means that the processing context is something that is paired at all times. When you're handling a message as well, when you're dispatching a message, you might have one. In this case, I don't have one, because I'm coming from a REST controller, so really the starting point into my application. Hence why I can use a null. But you could obviously also use null, because as is apparent, it is a nullable field. I just figured this is a bit nicer to the eye. I don't really like nulls. So, that said, let's move on to fix the rest of the code. This is void.class, and we can copy that for this one as well. The queries are still roughly the same, because we have not changed the queries yet. But I do need to change this guy, because I'm not using project reactors subscription many anymore. I'm using Axon Framework's plain subscription query. All right, now that guy works, or compiles at least. This is still red, but we'll get there. Let's first start removing some other things that I just reminded myself of. As you can see, there's still a RSocket controller. As I told earlier, I am not going to build that, so let's keep it easy. That letter support is not part of milestone 1. Yes, it will return, don't worry, but as it's not in milestone 1, I cannot use this, so we can delete that as well. Makes it a very easy migration, huh? Doing it like this. Kidding, of course. I am planning, as I pointed out earlier, to do, well, subsequent videos of this. I'll always start from the beginning again. So I'll start with the same application and then do the migration at that point in time. So you can see the diffs as they're changing around. If you would go through all the videos, if you'd like, of course. You could also just decide to only watch the last one. Now, we are going to our messages with double reason. we can change these into records now. So I want these to be records because I really love the small format of the record. We're going to remove all this cruft that IntelliJ thinks it needs, but I don't really need at all. I really love this format, man. If you're not using this yet for immutable data types, I'm not sure why. There's one thing here that I need to change, and that is this annotation. As you might have heard, if you're watching this, is that we're providing the dynamic consistency boundary with our event store. In the recordings or the presentations that some of our colleagues did, like Milan or Sarah, they called this killing the aggregate. It is it is essentially a way that we're feeling that we're flowing over into Axon Framework. This does not mean you cannot make aggregates anymore. That I'm changing this also does not mean that this annotation, if you're doing the migration, will no longer exist. I'm just doing this switch because I want to show it like this. I want to show the new flow. I want to show the suggested flow as of Framework 5, which is to say this command is targeted to an entity with the game identifier. I'm making it on purpose more flexible. And as you can imagine, I'm going to do this for the other commands as well. So we're going to make them into a record. We're going to delete the cruft, and we're going to change this compiling like so. And I want my stuff to be pretty. And I'm also doing that for the return game command, converting it, changing this guy, aligning it in my favorite formatting mode, and killing all the cruft. Now, I'm going to do a similar exercise for the events, because these also need something extra, which stems from the dynamic consistency boundary I was just talking about. Because Axon Framework 5 will no longer be aggregate specific, that essentially means that a published event from within, when you're handling it, can belong to several entities. So you could arguably see the difference in before, so DCB in non-DCB world and current DCB world, that you can have either 0 or n and identifiers instead of just 1 or 0 or 1 with the aggregate. Still, I'm taking this is the default one, but as Axon Framework cannot make an automatic assumption anymore, you need to tell it what the identifier of this event is, if you have it as an identifier. The naming for this is the event tag. So it is a tag of the event that you can choose as you will. This time I'm calling it the game ID because my tag is the game identifier. If you don't specify this, it'll use the field name. You can also use this on methods if you like. I'm now doing it on the field because I prefer this format. I think it's kind of nice and clean. And well, essentially, like I pointed out, you could do this for each of these. I could also say that the title is also an event tag, if you like. And then this event, when it is published, will have 2 tags in the store. 2 forms of identifiers. Lots of freedom, so to say. So, I need to copy this guy as well into the other events, because we got more events. Again, changing this into a record, adding the annotation, doing it so, killing the cruft, and indenting it nicely. And then the last one, the game returned event, again doing the same, adding the annotation, doing the indentation, and removing the cruft. So, alright. Those are the messages. Let's see if I'm missing something. I did the annotations. Yeah, I think we can go to, we're going to remove some more cruft here. So here I have an exception mapper, I have a result handler configuration, and a retry constraint enqueue policy. Ooh, nice words. The enqueue policy is from the dead letter queue. As I pointed out earlier, we don't have a dead letter queue yet, so we can kill it. The exception mapper is to deal with @exception handler annotated methods. That support is bound to come back in milestone 2. We're on milestone 1. so I can remove that as well. And the result handler is in that same area. It's configuring that mapper. Well, we don't have that, so we can get rid of it as well. Okay, first going to change something in the projectors, because as you see, my annotations are now all of a sudden broken. Now, why are they broken? That is because we have moved all our annotations into a specific annotation package, if they come from that. So the event handler now is in an event handler, well, an annotation package of it. The query handler as well. So this would definitely be a change you need to do. When it comes to that target aggregate identifier, we've seen, well, we will provide an easy way that you don't have to do that, that the target aggregate identifier still remains. Same for events that come from regular entity, so regular aggregate, so the old approach, or if that's your preferred approach, the preferred approach. So those aren't necessities. I'm purely showing them because I want to show the new bits as well a little bit. Yeah, and I removed the processing group annotation because same story, we don't have that yet. The processing group adjustments will come in the following milestone as well, milestone 2. This guy also needs to change, so this one's going to go. Annotation needs to be present. This one can go. Okay, so this was rather easy. Okay, so we're done with the query side, and we're not going to look at the query side yet, because yeah, the querying support and the event processing support will respectively come in milestone 3 and 2. Not something to deal with right now. Controller is done. We can look at the game though. This guy is kind of broken at the moment. And that is because the only support we have at this moment for command handling is a stateful command handler. And you might wonder, Steven, what is a stateful command handler? Well, I'm just going to show you. What about that? I think that's the nicest. So, again, we need to change something here. Command handlers are from an annotation, like so. This guy is going to go. I'm not dealing with profiles now because I'm not going to break up my application. But I am going to tell Axon Framework, still in an annotated approach, because I like to do the annotated approach, that this is a model or an entity that I want to source based on the events it's going to handle. So I keep the event sourcing handlers in place. So those are down below, as you can see. But I now need to tell Axon that this class, well, actually is something that wants to handle events, that it actually sources those, that it can evolve itself based on those events. Event sourced entity. There we go. And that's this annotation. This annotation has, I don't have the documentation. No, I do. That's curious. Why is it not showing? Ah, wrong button. My apologies. So here we go. There are a couple of things we can set here. Those are actually what I want to show. Ah, no, I'm not doing it right. My apologies. If I do it like here, you can see that you can define a criteria resolver, an entity factory definition, and a tag key. Lots of difficult words there. The criteria resolver is something that Axon will use to resolve the criteria when it comes to appending events. The only case you would need that is if you're going to make a more complex entity or publication of events that uses several entities in one go. We're not doing that, so we're not going to use that. I will show that in a future video because I do think it is very powerful. It is in essence also a large part of what DCB is bringing us. It is that solution I told you that you can have n identifiers and that you can load a model based on n identifiers instead of just one. And that is a huge change to us. So, different video. Because this is migration and this model was just with a single tag. So, but you might think, hey, this tag key, doesn't that resemble something? Well, it does. It resembles what I set in the events. And it needs to resemble this. If these two don't match, then, well, the framework will think, okay, yeah, nice, you are giving me an entity that can handle events. I'm going to look for events with the tag you defined for me. If you don't set this, the tag is the class name. So I could also, if I want to, say this. That would work. Then I publish my events with the tag game and then the identifier of the game. For those that coming from frameworks of yore, this is essentially the way how we map the aggregate type and the aggregate identifier that your old event store has. We're using them as so in a tag. But I don't need this. Well, not in my example, because I don't have an old event store that I'm using. I'm starting from scratch. Bit of a hack maybe, but food for another operation. With that said, I do need to keep that, of course. So game ID. And we are gonna move our command handlers. But before we move our command handlers, I'm gonna make methods out of these. And this is the insufficient stock. As insufficient stock. You might be wondering, Steven, why are you moving your validations? Not released yet. Well, you will see in a bit. I'm also choosing to make these public because I need to access them. Similarly, we're going to remove, let's move this guy up. Not returned by original or enter. Oh, typos. I don't like typos. Like so. I'm going to move it there. Make this public. And now we have our command handlers. One thing I actually glanced over is that this used to be a constructor command handler. I'm going to be blunt. That is not coming back in Framework 5. You cannot make command handling constructors anymore. The reason for it is very technical and under the hood and has a lot to do with all the nasty reflection we had to do for that. But we think it is, well, a smell. So we don't support that anymore. That means that that's definitely a change you'd need to make. What I just did was, okay, let's move them back for show. Oh, this is not working. Oh, why is it doing that? I don't want you to do this. I want you to return it here. What you could also do is make this static. And then do it the other way around, of course. Then it would be an instantiator of the thing. But a constructor will no longer work. We'll introduce the full-fledged, old-fashioned aggregate modeling in Milestone 2 as well. That will have more support for how you construct those things. But now, for the time being, I'm going to make that stateful command handler I was talking about. And I'm going to make that into a separate guy, like so. I'm going to make this a Spring component, because I'm still using Spring, even though Axon Spring support doesn't exist yet. And I'm adding these guys. You might think, Steven, how are you going to get that model here? Well, don't fret, I have something for that. And that's the inject entity, like so. I can just grab it if I'd like to. And then on that, I can do my validation. So this is really a flip around, essentially. That is roughly how you could see the change as well, from a stateful command handler to what you might have been used to. I don't want you to inject commands entirely, but it doesn't matter. We're gonna do this as a method. So let me finish first, and then I make. Nah, that's not what we want. Come on, man. You know that that's not what we want. IntelliJ, come on. We want you to make a getter of the identifier, like so. Yes, nice. This is, yeah, it's exposing it. We don't want that either. We can make this private. Okay. So, a stateful command handler, roughly put, is nothing else than, well, you handling a command and getting the model, the entity injected right away. The state injected right away. You can even do this in a couple of ways if you like. I can get a thing called the state manager. This is the component that Axon Framework uses under the hood to retrieve this annotation-based guy. This state manager is essentially a collection of all the entity repositories that you register within your application. And I'm very deliberately saying all, because we do intend to not just let this be a command-specific thing. So the chances are high this is going to come back as a query handling thing as well. I think that's very nice, but not something to deal with now. Also something for another PR. There's one more thing I need to kill here, and that is the use of the aggregate lifecycle.apply. This guy uses that aforementioned thread local support. As I told, we're not doing thread locals anymore, so we're going to kick this out. So how do we append events? We inject an event appender. And that's it. That's all we need to do. So I think that is rather straightforward. So we do so. This does become a necessity, as you see. So it does mean that your message handlers will need an additional parameter to do the appending of the events. I am, however, very confident that we are able to make a migration script that does this on the fly to replace any invocations of the aggregate lifecycle. For now, well, I need to do it manually, but in the future you don't have to. Okay, I'm also going to make a configuration class. This is a new necessity because I'm not yet in a Spring environment. I'm going to make this a configuration. I'm going to add a public stateful command handling module, static, the game module, like so. This stateful command handling module is what, once we have full Spring support, or perhaps Quarkus support or Micronaut support, which we are definitely thinking of, will be made for you. As we don't have that yet, I need to deal with Axon's configuration myself. So I'm making a named module, so we name these guys. And here we have two flows, either entities or command handlers. Let's first go into the entity phase. Let's remove that guy. And I'm going to add an entity, and this is an event sourced entity builder. And here I got two paths. I can either make an entity from scratch, and if I do this, I get all kinds of methods like that entity factory we saw in the annotation, the criteria resolver that we also saw in the annotation, and the entity evolver, or the event sourcing handlers if you want to do it separate. We're not doing that though. We're using the annotated one and injecting it like so. I do think this is all. My apologies. I need to define the identifier as well. And we're using a string identifier. So we have this guy, and we're going to tell what its command handlers are. And this is also something I can do all the separate command handlers, if you will. So based on a name for that command handler and the command handler, you can inject it. I'm not doing it that way. I'm doing an annotated command handling module. And this will make that new game command handler. And this can be built like so. So here we got our plain configuration. This does remind me, we're not making this a component. We don't have it needed to be a component. Our first configuration is ready. With that we can go to the other configuration, which is here. It still has a lot of craft about that letter queue, interceptors and serializers. I'm going to be very blunt. I'm going to remove everything, even the serializers. Yes, serializers are coming back, but that is also a milestone 2 thing, so I don't have that yet. What I'm going to introduce is Axon's application configurer. And this is the Axon configurer, as I like to call it. And this will get, this will get the guy I just made. So here, I do need to make this a bean, otherwise it's not going to work. Inject it like so. This is also a bean. And now I'm going to make a configurer. As I told earlier on, we're doing event sourcing, and every module has its own configuration. They eat from one another though. So this event sourcing configurer uses modeling, the modeling uses messaging, and that's the layering we have. We're just making one, and we're going into the modeling side because we have a model. In this way I get the modeling configurer, and I can register my game module like so. This is, okay, I get this to inline. This is my configuration, or my configurer. This is not yet done. You might wonder why I'm splitting it, but I'll show you in a minute. I'm adding another bean, which is the configuration from Axon. I need to grab the right one. Configuration. And this gets the Axon configurer and starts it. And that's all I do. You might be wondering why I'm splitting this, because you could do this in one go. Well, I'm splitting this for a very good reason, and that is for the tests. So here, I also have some tests I still need to remove, otherwise it's not going to compile. I'm going to be lazy because I'm a bit over time already. My apologies for that. So I'm going to remove these guys too. And I'm going into the game test. Because another one of the big pillars we did next to the stateful command handling and the configuration was the test fixtures by our new colleague Mateusz. So we now have an Axon test fixture. I'm deliberately calling this the Axon fixture to not overlap. This guy, to create it, I use the Axon test fixture with, and I need to inject that configurer I just made. So by setting it as a static thing for my convenience, there are obviously different ways. I can grab it like so. I do need to get to the other thing as well, but I also have the game configuration with the game module, so I can set it. Now, again, you might be wondering, why are you doing this? Why do I all of a sudden need to inject the configuration into the test fixture instead of just my class? Again, don't fret. This aggregate test fixture will remain as a legacy thing, deliberately saying legacy, for several reasons. Well, it remains legacy for the migration, but we're doing the switch for a couple of reasons. By injecting the entire configuration, we are certain that your test fixture will validate against how you set up your Axon application. In the past, if you'd had dispatch interceptors, you need to register them here separately again. Whereas if you just inject the config, you're done. It just works. You get all that stuff out of the box. We know what's there. Furthermore, by making this shift from the old aggregate focus, which we're going to get rid of anyhow, to the more generic Axon focus, that allows us to make a test fixture that can deal with commands, events, and queries alike, validating any form of entity that's potentially being loaded or validated on. Ideally also other tools that you're using from Axon to validate, like snapshotting and the dead letter queue. By making this more generic and getting the entire configuration, we are able to do so. So that's why we did it. And there is a bit of a change here, as you might expect. This is broken down into specific phases. The keen eye might have seen me do the same for the builders just now. We feel that this is nice. We feel that this makes sense, because now it is very clear that you're doing a given when then, as you can see, because you really have the given stop, the when stop, and the then stop. It also allows us to switch the then and when phase based on what you're invoking at this point, so that you get different validation operations. So be sure to give your opinion on things like this, or everything, because who knows, maybe we'll change it. Alright, we're going to do another one, like so. And I'm again going to extend my apologies. I figured I'd be busy for, well, 40 minutes or so. Apparently I don't know how talkative I am in sessions like this. So yeah, I definitely need 5 more minutes. So I hope you can bear with me. during this stream or this recording, however you're fancying this. So another given, events. You see that everything here is based on the events because, well, that is the flow I am testing. And we got the when command, and in a bit I'll show some other flows as well. Well, we're already hitting another flow. Here we're doing the exception stuff, as you can see. And the exception changes a bit. Ooh, now that I'm seeing this, I remember that I'm forgetting something in our model. It's actually kind of nice, because that means we got more to do. What I'm injecting here is the description. I'm going to kill this. So you see that the exception validation also changed a little bit. We still have just the class. Also have a very generic satisfies, so that you can do the check you'd like. That is in place on several layers though. So if I do events, you also have events for a collection or just objects. You can satisfy them, or you have a match. We do the satisfy approach on purpose so that you can choose if you want to use J or Hamcraft matchers or whatever. We're no longer going to be biased in that area. You can pick what you want. Let's first all fix this, and then I'm going to fix our model, because I made a mistake. Yes, even I make mistakes, as everybody does. Making mistakes is good, because it means you learn. So, okay. And then we do the then exception, a rental command exception, the class, and then we take this code as is, like so. And we can kill the rest. Oh, no smileys, please. Oh, you can smile if you want, but I'm not going to insert smileys. Alright. So, again, I did point out that we're going to keep the old approach as a legacy solution as well, just to ease your integration, because I am fully aware, or we are fully aware, that the test fixtures, as you can see already, is, well, in my sample, and it's a small application, I already got 100 lines. I know plenty of people that have very large aggregates that will touch, well, would potentially, I assume at least, have a very large test fixture class. By, well, killing that out of the blue and then having everybody required to do the exercise I'm doing right now, the moment you're switching from 4 to 5, that's not very friendly. So as we did with previous releases, there will be a legacy package, and that legacy package will refer to that didn't work, will contain old stuff that is there so that you can do your migration, but eventually will be removed because, well, we don't need it. Okay, so the test fixture compiles, and with that we need to go back to our game, which is now just an event source guy, but I forgot something. It's these, because like I pointed also out, we don't have exception handling logic just yet. So what we need to do is take these guys that I have here, these codes, because the codes are still quite valid. I'm going to change to a rental command exception, and this this takes that exception that we have, rental command exception, like so. As a couple, we don't have the previous clause anymore, and we have this guy. No, we're going to do it even blunter, like so. Okay, and I'm going to do the similar exercise for the other two. I'm going to be lazy. Doesn't everybody like copy paste? Here we have different returner, that's for this guy. And here we have the unreleased, which is for this guy. And one minor pet peeve, I don't like this. I don't need a full command, I just need the value. Yeah. One thing you can see from this is that I'm already removing my command handlers entirely from my model. It is inching very closely to I just have state and I have my methods. Now, if I would choose to not make an annotated game model, as I'm doing in the config class here, but I'm saying, oh no, I want the regular approach or the full-fledged approach. Let's just make that an example. I'm already over time anyhow. So we're doing a regular entity of this. Then we need to define the factory first. And then you can do all these steps separately, like I pointed out. You can do the resolving of the criteria separately, which gives you the configuration, and you need to set, well, in this case, I'm okay with having any tag. And then you can do your entity evolver. And the entity evolver is a new interface we introduced. So we can do a new entity evolver, just for clarity. As you can see, this thing gets the entity, the event, and the processing context you saw earlier. And then you can return the game change. So this is internally what we use to do the event sourcing now. So you could entirely remove all the annotations from your model. This is something that's a rather big shift for Axon Framework. I'm going to remove this because it's not compiling anyhow. Because we were very much pragmatic, so to say, we just figured, yeah, just use annotations, it's easy, right? But yeah, if you're really DDD minded, you know you don't want that. You don't want annotations in your model. So you want to get rid of those. Now you can. Okay, I'm nearing the end. I'm gonna do the demo gods a favor, or I'm asking them for a favor. Let's see if my tests run. And some of them do, some of them don't. It's curious. And this is because let's see what it says. The game has not been released yet. The messages don't compare, I guess. I don't know how I expected this to work then. Oh, this is wrong. You see? That makes a huge difference. This is insufficient stock. And this is unreleased. Alright, switch them around. The old switcheroo. So let's try them again. See if this works. Now it does. Great success. With that, we almost have an application that can run. The one thing I don't have yet, and the keen eye again might have spotted that, is that these beans are not exposed. That's because, again, I don't have the Axon Spring Boot starter yet, so I need to expose those beans myself. So let's do so. So we're going to add a public command gateway. This automatically also gives me a means to show the configuration. No. I do need to use this guy entirely, like so. Let's go away. No, that is not correct, IntelliJ. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the Axon configuration for components it has. You can see that it has that flexibility. Asking it for the command gateway. I'm going to copy this, because I also need this for the query gateway. And I also need this for the query update emitter, because those things are present in this application. And this is query. And this is query update emitter to not clash. Okay. And with this, I'm pretty confident we have a runnable application. Let's again see if the demo gods are nice enough. So, and then we can test that through my HTTP endpoints that I have prepped in this application. Oh, I'm just running not running the entire application. My apologies. Let's do all. Try it again. Seems to be running. Started. Very nice. Let's clear this out for ease. And we're gonna let's try to register a game. I do think that was very slow, but I do think it did this thing. No. What is the shortcut? Oh my god. Okay, my apologies. I don't know the shortcut, how to jump back. So we're going into Going back to this one, what's this? Alt 8. Alt 8. Okay, it did a command. Let's do a bunch of these. See how these work. Seems to work. That's very nice. So we got our applications going in. We should also be able to do some tasks on these. So we should be able to rent this game. We got a server error, and did I click this one or did I click that one? This one also server error. Just curious, because I do think that this game is registered. Okay. No, my application fails. That's so sad. That's what you do, or that's what you get when you do demos, huh? My fault. Can I do the renting though? Yeah, this works. If I rent another game, this one works as well. If I rent something that's only being rented out, so 5, 7, so I did this. Yeah, now it fails. So renting twice does fail. That's what I would expect. So my model is doing its thing. My query model is not. Rental insufficient items for this. So okay, the validation is doing its thing. That's something I'm happy about. And this one should I assume also have failed, but it did not. Or did it? No, it did. Insufficient items in stock. Yeah, the creation is not working, and I'm not sure why. Or the creation of that one aggregate. Elder Ring doesn't want to be created. Okay, I think that is enough blabbering, really. I have shown what I wanted to show. It runs, arguably with some bugs. That is to be expected from such a quick live demo session. So, but this at least works. I will fix the things I have, and I will push this to a branch. So if you're curious, you can watch it on my GitHub. The branch is AF5-M1 migration. I'll add more branches for other milestones and other changes. This is a migration really. So you can play around and see it for yourself. I'll do that after the fact. I also have a couple of gotchas I want to share with all of you, just to be sure. So here I got my cheat sheet prepped. So version changes. Want to repeat that Java is on JDK 21 right now. If you want to use Framework 5, if you're migrating from 4 to 5, be sure that you're on JDK 21. Once Spring support is there, it's going to be the latest, so no Spring Boot 2 support anymore. I think that is fair, but just so you know. Same for the Javax Jakarta story, just Jakarta, no Javax stuff. Hibernate 6, no Hibernate 5, all those things. So deal with that, if you will. The bigger things we did in this milestone that are apparent to you are the configuration, the stateful command handlers, and the test fixtures. Under the hood, we also did a lot with the unit of work and how we're dealing with messaging right now. That's obviously not something you would touch if you don't want to. It's just a choice. So the configuration for now is, well, the builders as you've seen. There are more methods out there. If you want to play around with it, please have a look. The stateful command handlers, so a separate class for command handling and a separate class for your model. And if you want, even a separate class for your event sourcing handling. That is one of the things we did too. And we got our test fixtures in place, which is something you can deal with right away. But if you have a lot of test fixtures, we'll make certain that the old one is still there. And one thing I really need to stress is that when you're making an application like this, be specific about your tags. If you are coming from an old application with an old relational database or Axon Server instance using the aggregate-based approach, we got you covered. We will default the tag to the aggregate type and the identifier, and we will fill it as it is needed so that Framework can deal with it. If you're making a new application or you want to switch it around, be mindful that those tags align, that the tags in the events align with the tags in the aggregate or in the entity. So yeah, that's really it. So thanks. I do see I have a couple of viewers. So thanks for being here. Thanks thanks for sticking along. Sorry for the long haul. This was definitely a bit longer than I anticipated. I'll prep myself better for the next time, or change the schedule. I hope you enjoyed this. If you do have any questions, hi Kevin, hi. If you do have any questions, well, I can still stick around. I think that's only fair. And if you don't, then we're going to close it off here. Oh, I see one. Would an open rewrite style tool be an option to automate this? Yes, Trimok, I think I should say, that is something we have plans for. So roughly speaking, what we're thinking for migration is a bunch of things. So let's do a scratch. I like scratches. For one, you would have a migration guide. I think that's a given. You need to have a migration guide. This is something that we're already prepping in Framework 5. So there's a file called API changes that you can use. I can actually show that because I think that is only fair. If I go to Framework and I switch to the right branch. Oy. There we go. There is a folder called Axon 5, and in that folder there says API changes markdown, which is a very extensive write down already of the unit of work changes, what we did to the messaging, which I didn't touch because you don't necessarily have to touch it, other APIs that we changed, what we did to the event store with DCB support. We will adjust this in an actual migration guide because this is just for us, for bookkeeping, to make sure that we have everything, but you can use it. So also a list of the classes. Another thing that we are going to do, going back, is that Axon legacy package that I was talking about. So this will contain things like the old aggregate annotations, because we think that they still need to remain. And that's where they are. I think we might even do the same for the current annotations. So like for the command and event handler that I had to change the import for. Not 100% sure yet. We'll figure that out once we're nearing the actual release. This will also contain the aggregate test fixture that I just pointed out. Just so that where you have your integrations, it becomes as easy as possible for you. We do want to be very clear that that's old stuff, so we will likely deprecate it so that your IDE tells you I'm missing this. And then third is an open rewrite script, for sure. For those who are not aware, Open Rewrite is a tool that can automate your migration. A lot of the things I did are definitely something we can automate. I, in all honesty, dread an automation of the aggregate test fixture because it changed a lot. But that's just because I don't know Open Rewrite in most details. We've used this for import changes and stuff like that, and version changes in POMs. That is pretty easy, but actually changing your methods, taking into account that you might be using Kotlin, might be using Java, maybe even using Scala or Groovy, I'm not sure yet how to tackle that. But it is definitely something we're thinking of. Okay. Any other questions, perchance? Thanks, Timok. Because if not, then I'm going to close with something. And the thing I want to close with is, if I go here, we already have a getting started. So sure, this video can act as a getting started, but it's on the home page, I think. Yeah, we also have a framework for getting started. Glad to help, Kevin. I'm happy you enjoyed it. This getting started will essentially do the same that I did, but then from scratch. So it will also cover the test fixtures, the configuration, and the entity changes and stateful command handler changes. This also has the benefit that it shows the dual entity approach. So you can have a feel for that. So be sure to check this out. And if you're curious on the roadmap, we actually have that on our forum. So here we go. Here you see what we did in milestone 1. A bit below I drafted what will come in milestone 2, which I've also been talking about. And then we have milestone